Okay, so I'm going to say good morning one last time. I am recording this session today because I don't know the next time I'm going to share this particular session, but I think it's a really important one. And I have to tell you just straight out that prior to Google, I used Word, and then I used a program before that, and I can't even think of the name of it, but it was so important to me, this particular program, and I didn't want to move to Word, and I was very hesitant. And I want to share that with you because once I moved to Word, I didn't go back. And then now, unless I have to do something in Word, I use Google. I don't use Word hardly at all. And so I share that because I want you to know that I'm hesitant to change as well. I think that change needs to be thought about. You need to think about what's best for you, what's best for your students, what makes it easiest for you. But I am somebody who now uses Google almost exclusively, and it's kind of annoying to me when I have to go back and use Word, which I was attached to after I was attached. And I'm trying to think of the other one. There was like a very famous format, and a lot of people used it, but Word won the competition here. You know, there's always competition between different technologies, and one always wins out. And so the question is, which one? But for me, it's Google all the way at this point. And I'd like to share with you, but I do want to tell you that we are going to have a little bonus topic of HyperDocs, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. And we're really going to be introducing these technologies today, but I have tutorials for all of you. And if the tutorial is something that you're like, oh, I need more, you can always go into YouTube and find more tutorials. There's always tutorials for all of these different softwares and browsers and all of that. So a couple of questions about why Google. So I love Google because it really allows students to be creative, critical thinkers with the pages, with the docs, with the forms that I make. They're able to really be interactive with me on the spot. It allows for communication and collaboration. So I was always one of those students. I love to work with others, but I hate to work with others. There's this love-hate relationship. And part of that has to do with the fact that if you were in class and you're like, okay, you're doing this group project, and then the goal is that you have to find a time to meet after class. And trying to find that place to meet, that time to meet was always very troublesome. And then somebody always wouldn't be able to meet, and it was problematic. But with Google, you're allowed to communicate and collaborate on the spot. You don't have to be in the same place. The next one I like a lot. As much as I like to create these beautiful looking documents for my students, I would create these beautiful pages on Word, and I'd print them out at home on a color printer, and I would be so excited to bring these color copies into my students. And then I would see there was a problem. Okay, there's a problem, so please edit this. There's a typo, or I wrote something incorrectly here, or I wanted to change something after talking with the students, and based on their questions, I'm like, oh, I need an extra direction here. And you can't do that on Word, but when you have your assignment on Google, it is very easy to make that change right on the go, right there. It's just so easy to do that. So even with your handouts that you give to students, you can edit them on the go. You don't have to save them and then upload them again. They're accessible on any device, so it's very easy for students to see them using their phones, using tablets, you know, using their computers. Most people are familiar with Google at this point. A lot of your students in the next few years are going to be ones who've come from Google Classroom, and so they're going to be really familiar with Google. And in fact, Google Sites, you know, I learned about how to use Google Sites because of my now 14-year-old daughter. When she did it a few years ago, a teacher made her use it. I'm like, oh, this is really neat. You know, what is this Google Site thing? So these kids are going to know it. And so, you know, they're really wonderful tools. What's great as well is if you are creating a handout that you're going to have students write in and use, you can create templates that you can use again later on. There's automatic backup. If you type something in, things are automatically backed up. You can go back and see revision history. So if for some reason somebody erases something, you can go back to the revision history and find it if you need to on something where people are working together. It's paperless. I used to spend thousands of dollars at Staples. I was that teacher that, you know, you could only have like this really ridiculous limit at the school. There was always a line for the copy machine. You wouldn't get very many. It was a pain. So I would go to Staples. I should have owned stock in Staples between ink and paper and their copy center, because I spent thousands of dollars over the years for my students on handouts. And some of the time, you know, you get too many handouts, so you have enough. I mean, and now it's like paperless. Like I use handouts very, very rarely. And I don't pick up paper either. I don't pick up essays, stacks of essays to read. And it's free, so you don't have to ask the school, can you please get me a subscription to Google? Because, you know, I pay for subscriptions for other things such as VoiceThread, but Google is free. So why Google? Because of all of these things here. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go through docs, slides, sites, and forms. I have a slide dedicated to each one. I'm going to show you an empty one and a few things to take a look at. And then I'm going to show you some samples. And then I have some video tutorials below each one. So let's talk about Google Docs. Okay, so Google Docs is like Microsoft Word. And what's great about all of this is that you can download Google Docs and keep it in Word, just like with slides. You can download them and keep them in PowerPoint. Very easy. They're very similar to one another. So I wanted to show you a blank Google Doc here. So we have a blank Google Doc here. It does not have a title, but there's a few things that I would like to show you about Google Docs, and it's something that I always show my students at the end of week 1 to the beginning of week 2, because I'm asking them to use Google Docs, and I have a little video that I created to show them a few key things about Google Docs. The first is that you need to have a title of some sort, and whatever you type out, and I already typed out title, you can change that actually to title if you want. I'm not going to do that here, but when you click on that, it actually saves it as that original title. You can change it if you would like. You can change that title at any time. If you want to use one of my Google anything, so like for example, this presentation, a lot of times teachers will do these wonderful presentations, and I am worried that they are going to throw them in the trash. So the first thing I do when I get to a presentation that is not mine is I go to File and I click on Make a Copy. That Make a Copy is really magical. And I have students and teachers requesting me edit access to my own documents. And I always ignore those emails, because the truth is that you can always make a copy of something that belongs to somebody else. So when you click on Make a Copy, it makes a copy, and I always like to put a title here that doesn't say copy of title. I like to put something like, if it's from somebody that I appreciate, I put their last name there, if they, you know, so that I know it's theirs, etc., etc., etc. You can choose to share whatever copy you make with the same people and copy comments and suggestions. I'm actually not going to copy this one because I'm going to throw it in the garbage later on, but I just wanted to show you the Make a Copy and how important that is. The other thing that I want to show you about Google Docs is that you have the share option here. This is really important, and actually the share option changed most recently, and so I've had to change mine. So you can actually share it with specific people who you want to just have those people be the editor. So you may send it to a few people, but you may just have a link, because right now it has, I'm gonna click on Done. If you notice here, there's a lock screen. And when there's this lock screen, nobody else can view the lock screen. So if students turn in this like this, then I'm not able to read it. So what I train my students to do is I train them how to make a copy, and then I train them that the very next thing that they're to do is to go to share and change that. So I am going to change to anyone with the link can. You can choose them to be a viewer, a commenter, which is wonderful for peer review, or anytime you want comments on some kind of document, or the editor, okay? So depending on the document, if you don't want somebody to change your document, you have them be the viewer. You click on done, and you notice that right here, anyone can now see this if you copy and paste that URL, okay? Everything else here, we have the editing. You can edit, suggest, you know, you have viewing, you want to see what it finally looks like. But all these things here that you see, they're very similar to what you would find in Word. And all you have to do is look around and see. And it's the same with Canvas. They're really, in the last few years, technology has been really smart about making icons be much more simpler across different types of products, okay? So now I would like to go back and actually show you a couple of different Google Docs that I use.
Janet, can I ask a question real quick? This is Ryan Babiar. Sorry to interrupt you.
Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good.
So I've been experimenting with this Google Docs because of all the things you've been doing in your classes I've been attending. So I have a question. So what I did for the last class is I put them in breakout rooms and gave them a link to a Google Doc.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, if I want them to be able to fill it in while they're in their breakout rooms, do I need to make them does it need to be an editor?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yep, it absolutely does need to be an editor. An excellent question, Ryan. In fact, you guys are going to be doing the same thing, just like you've been, you know, we've been doing today, and I've created it for an editor. But when you want to give them something to do where they're the editor, let me find the one. I don't have it necessarily in order here. So I'm going to click, 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 and here we go. Let's see, not this one. I'll be going back to these. I just want to make sure I'm going to answer Ryan's question in context. Okay, so right here, notice that I call it template. And so I call that a template. And when I want students to be able to write in mine, I go to file and I make a copy, and I call it fall 2020 or
okay,
spring 2021. And I so that I don't have to keep fixing these. So I always have a template of every single thing that I use where students fill out the items. So I'll start here. So I have a little jigsaw. I love to jigsaw. And jigsaw, in case you don't know, jigsaw is where you divide the content up among students. They're supposed to have read the whole thing. They don't know which group they're getting the jigsaw in, and you may even have a quiz that they take first to make sure they're not just reading their single chapter, but I then have a jigsaw. And so what I'm doing is I have each group discuss these questions here. And there's a space for them to fill in the responses. I like to use tables for these because it's a good way of organizing. And I also like to use color a lot. Now in my template, I actually added something yesterday. I like to make it so it's nice and neat. So group two's like, what's going on here? So I'm gonna fix that here. But I have group two, and group two has everything they're being asked is the same thing, but they're in chapter number 2. So you can,
Janet,
yes.
do you need to enter each name as an editor?
No, you absolutely do not need to do that. When you go to share, and I'm going to go to my sample one here so that I don't accidentally ruin one of my templates. What I do here is I click on share, and I'm going to change it to anyone with this link can edit. Okay, so now I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna copy this link, and I'm gonna go to our handy dandy chat, if I can get it to open once in a while. There we go. I am going to put it in the chat, and anyone can go to that page. Just 1 second. Anyone can go to that page and type whatever you want on it. So if you open that up, you go to that page. This was, like I said, a brand new page. So anyone can go on there and you can erase, you can change, you can be any kind of editor you want to be. And I don't care what you write on there. It doesn't matter to me. But I do want to share with you this. I'm going to share with you one thing that I'm not sharing right here for my face-to-face classes. One of the things that I do is hi Michael. One of the things I do in my face-to-face classes, and Michael actually helped me in my class and he would attest to this. One summer semester, I was teaching at Citrus College, and I went into the classroom and all they had were chalkboards. I had no chalk, and it was not even the green chalkboards, they were the brown chalkboards. I'm like, I'm not gonna do this. So what I did was I started, and it was wonderful. I was so glad for that opportunity, even though I was annoyed because I'd always come to class early and I'd write my agenda really neatly on the board, and I was very proud of it, but it would take me a lot of time. So what I started to do for my face-to-face classes is I have a document that I put into Canvas called Live Agendas. I don't have a copy of it here, so this would be something to take a note on. So I have what's called a live agenda, and every single day I add the material, the agenda. And a lot of times I add the agenda the night before. And what is really neat is I often would have students peeking and looking and seeing what my live agenda was going to be beforehand. Like I would see that they were on there checking to see because they knew about the time that I tended to write those notes on there. Now, the point of this is not just to give you that idea, but what I would do is every single Google Doc or any other type of activity, I would link it to that agenda. And so what would happen is when I go to the next semester and I have my, my calendar and my syllabi with everything that I'm doing, I go back and I revisit my live agendas from the previous semester, and I'm able to find my Google Doc. And so, for example, this is Jigsaw of Re-Encounter from Passing from English 102. And so what I do is I search for template and this title, and I find a clean one. I make a copy, I put it right in there, and I remember what it is I created for my students, because I've created hundreds of these over the last several years. And so you forget what you've created. There's times I've stumbled into things where I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. Why am I not using this? And the reason I'm not using this is because I've forgotten. But this sort of live agenda, I'm able to copy and paste, and I'm able to see what I did the semester before. And so what I like about this is that I'm able to see what I did. I'm able to then revise it to what I want to do the next time. And students, if they're absent, they're able to go to the live agenda and see what it is they missed, and any of the handouts that they missed, they're right there. They don't have to email me and ask me, which is always really annoying when somebody's absent. I always say, well, ask somebody else what you missed. Well, they can go to the live agenda and click. There's a link to the handout that the professor was discussing that day. So that is one of my practices that I use all the time in my face-to-face classes. And it's one of my very favorites that I do with this Google Doc format.
Janet?
Yes.
So one person made an activity in a breakout room and they were sharing it with their students, and they were all working on it and typing, and then all of a sudden everything got erased at the same time. What did that individual do wrong?
Okay, so that's where you're going to check and look at the history of what it is you created. There's comment history, but there's history. I'm trying to find, it's always right here, and when I have the editing here, you can look at a format history and you can find the right history and go back to it. And I did it in your last one because I don't look at history very often, but you go back to history and it, you know, what I would do right now is like, how do I find the history on the Google Doc? You can get a little visual of it, go back to the history and go back and find it. The other thing you can do always is you can always go back to this last arrow where there's an undo. And if it's not that far back, you can do the undo, but it's about the history. So write that down as a tool where you can look at the history. And I don't know why, I cannot see it right now.
It's under file.
It's under what?
File.
File. Thank you. Version history. There you go. So you can look at a version history and you'll actually see that I did something yesterday with it here. And so I can go back to the different versions. Thank you, Monique. I was looking for it. I used to remember it being over here, but either which way. Thank you.
So I'm sorry, I have one more question, Jen. I don't mean to keep overtaking your.
No, that's okay. Questions are great.
But so I'm seeing a couple other people have mentioned that if I only create one link, does that mean that in all, so let's say I have like 9 breakout rooms, does that mean if they're editing, each breakout room can see what everybody's doing?
Okay, you can do you can do a few different things. You can either put, and I just closed out the last document and I would have shown you, I actually have a table for each group. So there's one link. And so yes, they technically can, but I have it jigsawed. But if you are having everybody answer questions about the same thing, okay, what I would do is I would create a Google Doc and have all of them linked on one page. You give it to the whole class and just say, okay, you're going to be in a random breakout room. Once you get there, find the one with your group and your group's going to work on that one. So that's a way to kind of keep them from seeing everybody's at the same time. So it's one page, but you have links to all 9 or 10 or 5 or whatever it is, different ones. And then that way you don't have to determine who's in the breakout room ahead of time. You just say whatever breakout room you're in, that's the one you're going to be working on. Okay.
Thank you, Janet.
Yes.
Any good ideas of how to do this thing in an asynchronous course? Since students are there at all sorts of days / times, it is hard to get an interactive activity.
I actually do have interactive activities that I use for my asynchronous classes. And in fact, I think they were the first ones that I created them for. And I do not believe I have a sample in the presentation, but I'm going to add one in the presentation. I'm writing myself a note right here, add an asynchronous example. So thank you for asking for that. I'll do that at about 12:30 today. And then when you come back, you can refresh, go to refresh on the slideshow and you'll see an asynchronous example. So yes, I do that all the time where I have, and actually I'm going to show you an example of a slideshow where that's asynchronous as well. But when we're talking about Google Docs, I want to add one of those. All right, so I also want to share with you, I've shared several different examples of guided notes. Like I have a lecture and I want them to take some guided notes with it. But I wanted to show you this right here. This little first comment. I actually copy and paste this on every single one of my Google Docs where I want students to make a copy. I share with them, please download this by going to File and then go to Share in the upper right-hand corner where you will click on Allow anyone with a link to view. So I put this on any handout. I want students to create their own copy so that they can then go and write on, okay? So again, I have different questions here based on my lecture. And my last question, I'm actually pretty pleased with because I'm asking them to try and guess what the timed right prompt is going to be in my class. I am a big believer as an English teacher that we need to be teaching students how to do timed writes because they have to do them in lots of other classes. And some teachers give them the prompt, I do not. I like them to try and guess, and I try to give really specific clues so that they can guess if they're paying attention. And I give them this timed write lecture so that they know what types of clues to look for and how to prepare. All right. I also wanted to show you a couple, this is actually from HyperDoc, the HyperDoc Handbook. I wanted to share a few of these, where this is, you make a copy of this and you give students something, here's the explore, and you can give them some exploring things to look at, and then give them a task to do. You can explain something here. Maybe this would be where your lecture would be. You give them some examples about applying what they've learned. And so this is actually a nice little HyperDoc sort of, this could be asynchronous. So you want to build an experience for them using a Google Doc. And I would again go back to, I would copy and paste those instructions of what to do to make a copy. But this is a nice structure here for you to create. I actually bought this book this summer, and my plan is, when I have some time, is to create a few of these for my students to start, you know, moving in this direction for them. So I wanted to show that to you.
Janet?
Yes.
Where is the word count found on the Google Doc?
Okay. All right. If you go to Tools, word count is here. And I always share with students where the word count is because that's what I give them credit for. I want them to actually put the word count down on their final essays. And I don't want to have to read it. I don't want to have to go find the word count, so I require them to have it. And so I show them where it is. So yes, right under Tools.
And Janet, where is the accessibility checker?
Okay, so Monique, I don't know where the accessibility checker is on here, but I do know where the alt text is. And I actually want to go to a specific one. So let's see.
I believe it's an extension for the Google Doc. Okay. And when you add it, it's under Tools.
Okay, so go, so under add-ons. So you get the add-ons for your Google.
Right.
Okay.
Let me look it up. I've done it. I have it on my Google Doc, but I don't remember the exact instructions or directions. So let me look it up and I'll put it in chat.
And can you also send it to me as well?
Yes.
Because I also want to show you here, because there is something that I do all the time. Because with my accessibility, like for example, this was not created by me. Let me see if I can do this. No, I'm trying to click on the visual. I need to find, oh, I just lost it. Sorry about that. Oh, here it is. Okay, so here's a visual. So I'm going to right click on the visual. And there's a place that says alt text. And so I have on there timed write. So you want to use alt text there for any visuals that you include. And that's a good question about the accessibility checker. I'm using headers. You know, we've learned that we need to use the appropriate headers and using bullets and chunking things up, and also making sure to put alt tags on your visuals. But yes, Monique, if you can find that and send that to me as well, I will put it in the presentation too. All right, so I want to move on because we have a lot more to get through here. So let's take a look at slides. Okay, and slides again are very similar to PowerPoint. And I don't know if you know, But at the end of my presentations, one of my very favorite formats that I've been using recently is actually, and you've had access to it this whole time, it is called Slides Go. And if you click on it, Slides Go, you will see a place where you can go and find your own Slides Go, and you can find, I think there's hundreds of different templates that you can use, and you can use them as Google Slides or PowerPoint. So I want to just share that with you. Okay, so going back to the slides here, just like with PowerPoint, you want to make sure you title your presentation, and you also want to make sure that you go to share and allow people to view what you're seeing. They have themes here you can create from. In fact, I'm going to show you one where I've used this particular theme. And just like with your regular slides, there's, you have your layout and you can animate and all of that. And I will share with you, I want to go back to the slideshow here and share that even with using Google Docs, I have tutorials here. And I also have tutorials for using slides. So if you don't know how to use PowerPoint, for example, you can look at the tutorials. But I do want to share with you too that you can decide in your Google Drive, and yes, you have to have a Gmail, and I do have a Gmail. It's not my primary email. So you do need to have a Gmail account, but you don't have to use it actively. That when you add a document, you can upload your Word documents, which I did for a really long time because I had used Word and I didn't want to have to copy and paste. So I uploaded. I'm clicking on New. I'm waiting for it to open up for me. And you have an option. I'm going to see if it opens for me. Sometimes it doesn't on Zoom. It's trying. And what you can do is you can upload your PowerPoint. You can upload your Word document. You can upload your Excel spreadsheet. You can upload all of these things up to your Google Drive, and you can then edit them in Google. So I just want to let you know that. And the same is true is if you've created a slideshow, you can then go to File, and you can download as PowerPoint, okay? Or any, whatever else you want to do. And I also want to let you know, sometimes I want to share a single slide. I don't want to share every single slide for whatever reason. Like I might be giving a big presentation to my students, but I want to share a single slide. You can actually make a copy of just a single slide that you share with students, okay? So I wanted to show you a couple of slideshows here. This is one that students created, and even if you're not good at using Google, your students are. And sometimes you're like, oh, where did you get that? How did you do that? So this was actually a group project, and I'm actually going to show you the assignment that goes with it. But this is where students came together and put the highlights from this several week project we did with the book, and they added them to this slideshow. And what we did was each group then shared a live link to their slideshow to a discussion forum on Canvas so that you could take a look at everybody else's slideshows. This was before they took, their time to write on the book. And we voted on which one we thought did the best job, and we stated why and what we admired. And so this is a group project here where they each put together and shared things that they chose into this slideshow. So they created their own slideshow, and then they added the slides with the different samples of work that they did throughout the 5 or 6 weeks in the class. So that's one way you can use a slideshow. Another way you can use a slideshow for teaching, that beyond what you see me do every week with creating these slideshows, is I like to put together a slideshow where everybody does 1 or 2 slides based on information that I'm asking them to do. So I'm wanting them to take all this material that they've gathered for this particular unit on Man's Search for Meaning, and then I'm asking them to share certain things on 1 or 2 slides. And I'm asking them to first claim a slide with their name, and then they create their slides. And what's wonderful about this is this is causing them to have to think about, okay, I have all this wonderful information. How can I sift it down? How can I funnel it into the most important aspects that I want to share? And so it's really a wonderful critical thinking activity. So instead of trying to grab all these pieces of information, write this really long paper, I'm asking them to take all these pieces of information and simmer it down into a slide or 2. So I have instruction, I have, this overall, and then I have instructions, and then they take their slide and they create their slide. And I have a couple of comments here, and this is based on, experience here. Please do not change the theme. I've had students change the theme of the slideshow before. That didn't happen for a few semesters, so I didn't have that instruction. And again, necessity is the mother of invention. So when you see students doing something, they're like, oh, okay, make sure you don't do this. And then some students just are dying for a second slide because they want to have a bigger visual and they want to have a video. And so I now have created enough slides for students to take to if they want to. So this is an example of, and notice it says template, and I do this every semester, and they really enjoy this particular activity. All right, and I have tutorials here, and including recording a video, and oh, this one right here, this last one, create an interactive Google slideshow with Pear. I ran into this yesterday as I was preparing for this. You're going to want to take a look at this because you can create this interactive slideshow where students can interact, like you'll have questions on the page and they can respond to those questions on your slideshow. So I did not give you an example here. We don't have time for it, but really take a moment to look at this, create this interactive Google slideshow with Pear. I hit the jackpot with that one, and I think you'll really appreciate that one as well. And I want to remind everybody every single time, anytime you see something underlined, that means it's an outside link. So it's something else to support you. Okay, so let's, yes.
Is there a way for students to be able to draw arrows and label diagrams on a Google Doc?
Yes. There are. I will add that tutorial too. I want to add the accessibility and the adding of arrows. Okay, yes, I'm going to add that to this. All right, so I want to move forward to Google Sites in case you haven't ever seen a Google site. This is like a website, and this is something that you can use to create a liquid syllabus if you want. And in fact, I want to show you the tutorials, what I've included here. This summer at One and Michelle Pacansky-Brock put together a wonderful 3-day seminar. And one of the seminars was about creating a liquid syllabus. And she created a Canvas site that took people step by step for how to create this wonderful Google site. And the point was to create it for a syllabus. But it's helpful because a Google site is a Google site. There is a how to build a Google site tutorial with a YouTube video. And then there's how to do more with Google Sites an advanced tutorial. So I want to show you a couple of mine, and then I want to show you what they look like when it's not published. Okay, so I have one assignment that I give to my students in English 100, creating your own personal learning network. And I have a little lecture that they can click on and some information about why they should build a PLN or personal learning network. I have parameters. I have some how to do it instructions. But I really like Google Sites for putting together a whole project of instructions because it really pops. It's really easy to see on your phone. It's liquid, and it really helps students out. And as I create the actual site, students ask me questions, and then I go back and I fiddle with the instructions, and I don't have to do a lot. I just add something or edit it, but I can then publish it again and it looks really great. And so this is just an example of one of my assignments that I give to students, one project. Another example, I actually am sharing with you a presentation that I gave earlier this year at CAP called Social Media Literature Circles. And you can take a look at it if you'd like. I actually have a lot of examples of what you're going to see. This idea of HyperDoc, where I'm having students create these things as part of their literature circles. So I wanted to share those. So this is what a Google site looks like when it's published. Let me show you what it looks like when it's not published. So here we are. This is a brand new site that I opened up, and you have things that you can add here, including you have a title. You can use themes. You can add text box. You can embed videos. You have images, and you can add items from Google Drive. So I'll have handouts from Google Drive that I want them to use that they can click and use. They have layouts that they can use. You can create an image carousel. You can create a button and dividers and add the YouTube video, docs, a map. And you can also add pages so that people can go ahead and click on different pages, which I like an awful lot. So I'm going to show you just for a quick minute. I wasn't going to show you this, but I will show you my own published e-portfolio for this year. This is an example of what it looks like when I can sit here and add things to it. So I have this here, and then I have an example here of what it looks like published. And at the top, I have places where people can click, and they click and they open. And I've opened up a bunch of them, and different pages open. So it's like a regular website. So this is a Google site, and these are actually very easy to use. And I have all my syllabi here and links out to my syllabi. So I just want to share with you that you can add all of these things to your Google site, and it looks fantastic. It looks amazing, and it's free. So you can go to pages and add another page. And every time you do, you can add something. You can even click here and just choose something. I'm going to add some text here. So you click on that, and you can add normal text. You could do a header, a title. You just click and play around. And then you can also move these things around. These dots right here, you can move things around. So I can type something here and change what I want it to look like. I could even put a little background here where I can put an image, or I can do emphasis so that there's a color there, and it creates this beautiful website for free, and it is so easy to do. And again, once you've published it, you click on publish, and you can publish your site, and then you can share links with other people. Okay.
Janet,
Yes.
if you have time, can you show how to connect slides to Canvas?
To add slides to Canvas? Like
Yes.
a Google Slideshow? Sure. Yes. Yes. Let me move through. But anytime, I just want to share with you, anytime that you have a presentation or a Google site or Google Doc, when you go to share it and you utilize the share button and you copy a link, that link is going to be, I'm going to copy a link here. That link is what you're going to use to put into Canvas, and you can do it a few different ways. You can add a URL, or you can add it to a page. But I'll show you that in a little bit because I want to make sure I get through this. All right, so now I would like to get to, and like I said, this is an awful lot for a single hour. All of these topics I could spend a whole semester on this with you as a 3 to 4 unit class and have you create things. So this, that's why I have all these tutorials down here for you, because it's small steps for different things that you use. Okay. So now let's talk about Google Forms. So Google Forms, that form you have to fill out that we've been harassing you since the summertime, the online teaching training and certification approval form. That's a really long label, and the reason why I've memorized it is because we've gone to it a lot. And so when you're ready, you fill that form out. Well, how did we make that form? We made it through Google, and a brand new Google form looks like this, where you do not have a title, you have to put in a title, and you can ask people to turn in their email addresses so they have a copy. And what's wonderful about Google Forms is that you can ask these different questions, and it can be like a questionnaire. And you can choose what type of question you want them to do, check boxes, drop down, file uploads. Should it be a short answer? Should it be a paragraph? I like to use Google Forms even in my face-to-face classes. And let me show you a couple of examples of things that I do. So sometimes what I'll do in a face-to-face class, and you can do this in an online class, where I'll share a link and I'll say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 15 minutes to fill this out. And I have these questions here about analysis of this part of the book. And I want to point out here, I have this question about Jim Crow laws, where they have different choices that they can make. And I give them time to fill out this form. And once they're done, I can see their responses. And what an example of a response looks like for that particular question right there is, if I am looking at all of their responses, I can see that most people were surprised that there was segregation in regards to library and library books. They were surprised, like, why would there be segregation about library books? And so I see this response here. And what's wonderful is that we then can use that as a conversation starting point as to why were you surprised, and why would it be library books, and why did only so many people were surprised about this? And it gives this visual, and you can even have something as little as a single question, and they can then fill it out, and you are given information, and they are too, something to discuss. Another example is you can give them an exit ticket. An exit ticket can be given at the very end of a class that you have, such as today. If I wanted to give you an exit ticket, in fact, I'm going to be asking you for some feedback about these pro tip sessions, and I'm hoping for some really good data, and hopefully you guys are all finding these to be really valuable. But I'm going to want you to write it down, because my boss is asking me, I know you have all these people attending these sessions, but let's find out what they think about them, right? So that we can learn, so that we can improve, right? Or we know we're doing the right thing. Let's keep doing the right thing. Well, this is the same thing. So if we have a peer review session, whether it's in class or out of class, you can ask questions about whatever it is you want to make sure that you know that they're learning, and then you can write an overall announcement about that particular Google form. Another example that I use that you would see in my literature circles, I love this, the students had fun with this as well, is that, you know, we read a book. Okay, so what is your overall rating of this text? From, you know, 1 to 10, what do you give it? And give a rationale for your rating. And would you recommend this book to future students? Why or why not? You could do that for all sorts of topics. It's fun. People like to give their points of view. You could do a little Yelp review about something if you wanted to. You can use these things and really make the forms fun, and then share the data with your students. It's like a polling feature, just like you have in, you know, Zoom. There's the poll, but people are like, but how do we save the poll results? Well, you can do a Google form instead of a regular poll, and then you are able to save those poll results. So I wanted to share that with you as well. And then I have a teacher's guide to Google Forms, as well as 5 Google Form features every teacher should know. Okay, so I use Google Forms regularly. I do it as an introduction. I want them to fill things out. I want to know how they feel about the class. And all of these things, a lot of these things you've already seen in past presentations. You just might not have been thinking of the fact that they are in Google format. So,
Janet,
yes.
where do you find the alt tags on Google Forms for images?
Okay, that is a good question. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Do you know?
No, I don't either. We're gonna have to take a look. Yeah.
So these are good things, and you know, the questions that you're asking are good, and they go, oh yeah, I really hadn't thought about that. For alt tag for visual on forms. I would guess it's very similar to everything else that we've been looking at as well. So let me see, Rotten Tomatoes, let me see. I did not do an alt tag. Let's see, no. Let me see. Oh, I have to edit. So let me go to edit. The edit is in the lower right-hand corner. So I'm clicking on the pencil here. So I'm now going to go to Control and right link. Let's see. I don't know. I don't know. That is a good question. And so we'll find that out. I do want to let you know, though, I just created the template here, but the questions are here. But once people respond, that's where you see the responses. And once people have responded, you would see that pie graph. But you're only able to see that if you have that little pen, if you mark on the little pencil that was in the lower right-hand corner. All right, those are great questions. We'll figure it out and add it. Okay, so I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the HyperDoc Handbook. And I have a link to something that's not the HyperDoc Handbook, which actually gives you some wonderful descriptions and a good understanding of what a HyperDoc is. And I actually took a picture from that site, and it talks about the difference between a multimedia text set that you might give to students and what makes it a HyperDoc. So what makes it something that's interactive for students to work with, make choices, make critical thinking decisions on. So I'm not going to read this whole thing right here, but I would recommend that you come back and you take a look. I do want to show you really quickly a couple of these HyperDocs that I got from the book. And what's great is in the book, there's this QR code, and I have an app on my phone for the QR code. And the way I was able to share this with you today on here is I went to that app and I uploaded it here. So I have these mentor HyperDoc coming up right here. This is not mine. I didn't make a copy of it. So see how the request edit access, don't request, don't request, just come on. But I want to point out here is there are all sorts of different options here about, I mean, there's so many goodies in this presentation and just in this one alone. In fact, here is this as well. You can get your own version if you wanted to, but it's the same as this. But where they're showing you about how to create the HyperDocs. And some of these are for K-12, but the idea is the same. It doesn't matter whether it's college or K-12. Another one I wanted to show you here, I like this, and I'm planning on creating something like this for my students. So I'm gonna give them a topic that I'm gonna give them. They're gonna have, like, you know, they have to create this project, but then I'm gonna link them to the different tools that they could use to actually create their project. And I really thought this was creative. So, you know, maybe 80% of them use Padlet because we use Padlet in our class, but there may be some others that are wanting to look and see something different. And so they may choose a different sort of tool. So I like this idea for tools to collaborate. So kind of branching out and being comfortable with the fact of, oh, I haven't seen that before. I want to check that out. Okay. Another one I wanted to share with you from this book is tools to create. And again, this is not something that I've created for my own classes, but I do plan to create something just like this. And then I'll have a link back to Canvas about where they turn in their assignments. So this is theirs, but click here to see some projects because this is somebody else's link here. But I like this about what kind of tools are you going to use to create your own project. So there's a lot of choice built in here, and you can take a look and see if any of these work for you. And let's say you only want to give them choices of 2 or 3 tools. Well, then you don't need to make it be a whole big bingo chart here, or you can turn a couple of these into visuals. So I just wanted to share that with you. All right, so, and then I wanted to take a moment to let it be your turn, but I wanted to share this. This is from the Hyperdoc Handbook, that students are curious by nature. We just need to provide opportunities for them to be curious. I think that that's really important, that it doesn't matter what your topic is. And right here, this has saved me thousands of dollars, and I mean thousands of dollars every year. I'm not using the paper, I'm not wasting my time, and I want to be able to have you have an opportunity to share. But I wanted to take a moment too to share that this was actually from somebody else, HyperDoc Quotables. So if you want to come here and take a look and see what other people have been saying about the HyperDoc book. This is not mine. This was something I found from Kelly Hilton. She's one of the authors of the book. So what I'm going to do here, though, it is your turn. If you have anything that you use in your class, from a Google Doc to Google Slides to Google Forms or sites that you'd be willing to share with us here, I'd love for you to do that. And you'll notice that you were able to edit it here. And I'm probably going to share this as a mini pro tip next week so that we can get more people sharing. And I want to take all these and bring them back together. So I'm going to go to the chat, and I am going to put this in here and ask people to take a couple of minutes. All right, it's ready to go. If you could take a couple of minutes, if you have anything you're able to share here, we would love to see it. And if you don't, that's okay too. I would like to, I'm going to move it back here so that we're not staring at people. And I would like to open it up to see if there's any more questions beyond the ones that I've already answered, or my little list here of things that I need to add to this slideshow. And it's okay if we have silence too. I'm happy for that as well.
Thanks, Janet.
Thank you.
I got to go. I'm going to try to edit a Google Doc for my 12:30 live meeting. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, maybe you could share it afterwards. We'd love to see it, Ryan.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
It's under your turn. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Janet. I appreciate the meeting that you presented for us today.
You are welcome, Michael. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I think I'm going to share my midterm on Google Docs and post it onto the form you just posted. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Like I said, we want to get ideas. You know, I'm sharing things that I've found and sharing things that, you know, I've found from other people. But really what makes this rich is if we're able to share with one another. And I know some people that you're new to this, like you've never really used any of these tools and you're leaving going, oh my gosh, I don't know where to start. And if you don't know where to start with Google Docs, because that's just very similar to Word, and then move to Google Slides because that's the closest thing to PowerPoint. And then after that, you can, you know, brave on to forms and sites if you want.
Yeah, that's what happened with me. I already used docs and slides, but I never really used forms until I attended this meeting, and it is very helpful. I'm excited to start using it. I'm actually planning to start utilizing it for my class tomorrow.
Good.
So thank you again. Yeah.
and they're easy to do, Michael. That's the thing. You can create something just really quickly. They're very easy to do. And I want to point back to every single one of these. I have tutorials. These were not the only tutorials out there, but I do want to point out that the tutorials that I've shared them from people where you may want to go back and see the other things that they're giving tutorials on as well. So really, especially here with this liquid syllabus, it's, you know, this is the gold standard here. So these 4 slides where we're talking about, you know, forms, slides, you know, but I know people get nervous about trying new things. So just small steps. You don't need to try everything at one time, but, you know, just one at a time. Let's see if we have some here. I may have to, last edit was a couple minutes ago. And up here, refresh is very useful. Up in the upper left-hand corner, refresh is helpful for if you're in a live class and a bunch of people have written things, it's helpful here. So, yay, we have something here. So anyway, I'd like to ask you to please come back and add more. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And I want to thank everybody who came today. I hope you found it to be really useful and that, you know, like I said, keep this because there's lots of things that you can take a look at and find and use and revise